Hello and welcome to the Plant Breeding and Genomics Community of Practice webinar, How to Investigate Breeding Priorities Using Socioeconomic Methods.
So the title of the presentation today is How to Investigate Breeding Priorities Using Socioeconomic Methods. I am going to present this with our PhD student, Huixin Li, both of us affiliated with Washington State University. First of all, I would like to acknowledge the group of people who is behind all this work, the socioeconomic team members. We have Chen-Yang Yue, who is an economist at University of Minnesota, Vicky McCracken, economist at Washington State University, Jim Luby, pond breeder at University of Minnesota, and Jim McPherson, the manager of the Washington Tree Fruit Research Commission. We also have a group of hardworking grad students. We have Huixin Li and Lilian Carrillo. Both of them are PhD students at Washington State University. Alicia Rin and John Choi, they are PhD students at the University of Minnesota, and Shuo Li Zhao, who is a master's student at the University of Minnesota. The outline of the presentation today, I'll be talking about crossbreed and socioeconomics, mainly how socioeconomics discipline becomes part of a project that is mainly dealing with genetics, genomics, and the breeding science. I'm going to explain about the breeder survey. I'm going to explain about how the breeder survey constitutes 1/4 out of the whole group of activities that the socioeconomic team is conducting. Huixin is going to explain how did we analyze the data out of the breeder survey, and I'm going to talk about the conclusions and implications of our breeder survey study. So crossbreed and socioeconomics. The next slides are going to be explaining a little bit about crossbreed and the socioeconomic team goals. The mission statement of crossbreed is to develop and apply marker-assisted breeding based on improved knowledge of industry value and consumer preferences to accelerate and increase the efficiency of rosaceous cultivar release and successful cultivar adoption. This project is led by Amy Yesoni at Michigan State University and Cameron Peace at Washington State University. This project is being supported by the Specialty Crop Research Initiative of the USDA National Institute of Food and Agriculture. This project started in 2009, has a duration of 4 years. This year is our last year, and we obtained $7.2 million in federal funding. This slide is important to me because this explains the nature, the core goals of crossbreed. Crossbreed's goal is to bridge the chasm between genomics research, genomics knowledge, and breeding programs, market-assisted breeding. The ultimate goal is to improve the efficiency of breeding programs in developing new improved cultivars. Within the crossbreed group, there are several teams, and one of the teams is called socioeconomics. Refer us to the SE team. Our goal is to help accelerate and increase the efficiency of cultivar development and adoption by identifying valuable breeding trait targets. We objectively identify important breeding trait targets along the supply chain, and with this information, we aim to help breeders prioritize the most valuable target traits for market-assisted breeding development. This slide explains the whole activities, the whole set of activities of the socioeconomic team in crossbreed. The main activities are focused in 4 groups within the supply chain. The first group are the breeders. We survey breeders in 2010 to get their impressions, their values, their priorities for their current breeding programs. During the fall of 2011 and the winter of 2012, we surveyed producers to get their feelings for what traits are the most important to them in order to grow or to crop a successful cultivar. In the spring of 2011, we surveyed market intermediary individuals, which are composed by shippers, packers, processors, marketers. We wanted to know also from them what are the quality traits and plant traits that they consider the most important for their activities. And finally, least but not last, during 2012, last year, and this year, we are conducting a holistic consumer survey study because we want to get to know what consumers value the most in order in relation to quality traits for main rosaceous crops. I would like to point out here that our activities for the producer, the market intermediary, and the consumer survey are focused on 5 specific crops out of the whole crops that compose the rosaceous family. These crops are apples, strawberries, sweet cherries, tart cherries, and peaches. The objective of this webinar is to explore the application of survey data to determine how breeding targets are prioritized within rosaceous breeding programs. So I'm going to talk about now about the breeders survey. No previous studies have been done on this specific issue. We have related studies done in 1996 and 2001 and 2007, which these studies have been did research related to breeding programs, but did not specifically focus on what challenges or what elements influence breeders' priority setting. In the same way, no scientific literature to assess how rosaceous breeders establish priorities exist. So there is anecdotal evidence that there are conflicting supply chain parties' priorities. In other words, in some instances, breeders hear from producers, from growers, for what will be the most important quality and plant traits they would like to see in a new improved cultivar. However, intermediaries or consumers have a different set of priorities for what will appreciate most in a new improved cultivar. So there are conflicting supply chain priorities. The objective of the breeder survey was to improve the understanding of how breeders evaluate the importance of the trait and to provide a baseline for the larger study, the larger set of activities that I presented in previous slides. We wanted to compare priorities assigned by rosaceous crop breeders and by the rest of the supply chain parties. So if these priorities are aligned, if breeders are really listening from what growers, market intermediaries, and consumers are saying, or if they are having their own set of goals for their program. We wanted to put this into the context of the whole set of activities of the socioeconomic team in Rosebreed. Because we knew that we are going to interview the whole population of rosaceous breeding programs in the US and Canada, and we were facing with a long set of traits to start with, we wanted to reduce the number of traits for each crop to around 50. In order to reduce the number of traits and also to focus as precise as possible our survey, to be careful about the wording we use and to get to know what questions were going to be the ones that will provide the best information for our analysis, we conducted a pre-survey exercise. We sit with 14 breeders and we start asking questions. These questions help us elaborate our questions for the final survey. And I am giving here an example of the type of questions we ask to these breeders. With this information, we put together the breeder survey. This survey was distributed online. It was a web survey. We were able to recruit a comprehensive list of 60 rosaceous breeding programs in the US and Canada. And this survey lasted from April to June of 2010. So 3 months. We gave 3 months breeders to respond to our survey. Out of the 60 surveys we sent, we received responses from 40 breeders. Unfortunately, 5 of those responses were incomplete. So we end up using 35 complete responses. That represents 58% response rate. The crops that we got responses from were apple scion and rootstock, apricot scion, cherry scion, both sweet and tart cherry, peach scion, pear scion, blackberry, red raspberry, strawberry, and roses. Because we wanted our study, our analysis to be focused, and there was a complex set of responses with different priorities and different sets of traits to evaluate, we focused our analysis on fruit scion breeding programs. We did not consider programs addressing rootstock and roses. This means that our sample size was reduced to 32 usable responses. Out of the 32 responses, we ended up using 24. Why? Because for the statistical analysis to be meaningful, we needed enough observations from each respondent in order to conduct the meaningful statistic analysis. So in many cases, we only have 1 or 2 responses per crop. Our target was to have at least 4 respondents for each crop, so we could have enough degrees of freedom for our statistical analysis. That made us reduce our responses, our number of observations, to 24. At the end, we used responses from 8 programs in strawberry, 8 programs in peach, 4 in apple, and 4 in red raspberry. I am going now to explain or to describe how the survey looked like. We had 3 sections in the survey. In the first section, we asked about background information of the breeding program. For example, the main crop that was bred. This is something that I would like to expand a little bit more. Some breeding programs are breeding for more than 1 crop. So this survey was targeting the crop that the breeding program considered their main crop. So all the answers refer to that main crop. The main use of the target crop, if it was going to be used in the fresh or in the processed market, the years of experience of the breeder leading the program, and similar questions. Section 2 was a little bit larger. And here we ask about setting priorities, the considerations influencing priorities when selecting a trait for inclusion in the breeding program. In the example I'm showing, we are asking here the respondent to rate in a scale 0 to 10, being 0 very unimportant and 10 very important, how this group of interested parties influence the setting of priorities when selecting a trait for inclusion in the breeding program. So for example, we have producers' needs, wholesalers' needs, consumers' needs, and so on. In section 2, we also ask about the scale of importance, the rating of importance for technical considerations that influence the setting of priorities when selecting a trait for inclusion. Similar to the question before, we use a 0 to 10 scale, being 0 very unimportant and 10 very important. And among the technical considerations we asked about were environmental effects on trait expression, availability of genetic variation for the trait, availability of resources, and so on. Section 2 also included what challenges, how did breeders rated the challenges they face when determining the priorities? Again, we use the 0 to 10 scale, and when speaking about challenges, we include different types of challenges, not only the challenges related with funding or resource availability. We included challenges dealing with technology, for example, lack of consistent, standardized information on genetic material, lack of genetic material, lack of information on methods, and so on. We also asked about these challenges also included societal type of challenges. For example, pure communication with interested parties or separation term from long-term needs. Difficult to find consensus across interested parties. These were societal type of challenges. And finally, market-related challenges. The uncertainty if the variety being developed will be commercially viable. The next question asks breeders to rate the challenges faced when they implement the priorities in their program. Again, we use the 0 to 10 scale, and these challenges include resource-related challenges like funding, availability, labor staff availability, again, technical type of challenges like genetic markers availability, genetic material availability, trait heritability, genetic variation, and so on. Section 3 included the long list of traits. We had about 77 traits in total, and we asked breeders to select in a scale of 0 to 5, 0 being very unimportant and 5 being very, very important, what traits they were currently working to improve in their program. So we gave them a long set of traits. Of course, not all the traits were going to be applicable for each crop because we were dealing with different crops here. So we also included an option of not applicable. Whenever the breeders respond this question, the following question asks breeders to choose the probability they will be selecting or they will be including the trait in the previous question, the trait that they rated as very important in the previous question. We ask breeders what probability they will assign, what probability for including in the breeding program. So if in the previous question they assign a very important to one specific trait, the following question will have only the traits that were assigned a very important rating, and then we ask to select the probability between 0 and 100 that they will include that trait in their program. 0 being the low likelihood, the no probability, and 100% probability that they will include that trait in their program. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we analyze this data and what are the challenges we face when analyzing the data. The analysis was complicated because we had a large number of individual traits selectable for one crop. As I mentioned, we had at least 77 traits in our list. Because we did not have enough number of observations, enough number of responses for each crop, we were forced to use a cluster of traits. We aggregated individual traits for meaningful econometric analysis based on the expert opinion of a breeder using the criterion of similar contributions to fruit or plant characteristics. So at the end, the way we analyzed this information was not per individual trait, but per group of traits, per clusters of traits. And the reason being, we did not have enough observations, enough responses from each crop to analyze such a long list of traits. We refer to aggregated traits as trait clusters. And these trait clusters are all the traits that were related to fruit texture were named fruit texture. All traits related to fruit flavor were fruit flavor, fruit appearance, biotic resistance, abiotic resistance, plant habit, yield season, post-harvest quality, and phytonutrient content. So at the end, instead of 77 individual traits, we had a group of 9 clusters of traits that were easier to handle. Now Huixin is going to explain how did we analyze the data. Huixin.